Hello everyone, it is an honor to share this virtual encounter with all of you. I want to express my gratitude to Professor Shumin, who invited me to talk to you and reflect a little about the relevance of idols in Japanese society. My name is Yunuen Mandujano-Salazar. You can call me Yunuen. I am a doctor in social sciences and I have a master in Japanese studies. And currently I'm professor in the Department of Social Sciences at the Autonomous University of Ciudad Juárez in Mexico. I have been analyzing Japanese male idols, particularly Janis Jimucho idols, for more than a decade now. And I'm interested in the narratives promoted from the production side and how these insert into wider ideological discourses about Japanese national identity and socially expected male roles, attitudes, personalities. So today I will talk about this, focusing mostly on two recent cases, Arashi and King and Prince. I will rely on Foucault's notion of regime of truth and Michael Billig's ideas on banal nationalism. These to discuss the Japanese domestic media discourses that have been circulating during the post-3/11 period. This is after the Tohoku earthquake of 2011. I hope that you enjoyed the presentation, and if you are interested, at the end of it, I will share the links of the papers that I have written about the topic and that are the base of today's talk. Okay, so let's begin by placing the two basic notions that will support my arguments. Michael Billig says that in contemporary nation states, leaders must constantly feed the patriotic sentiment and the national identity by means of nationalist processes that can be cultural and even banal and innocuous. Considering this, we may argue that popular media contents are perhaps the most powerful tools to achieve this. Hence, popular idols can be relevant elements in the propagation of a national ideology. Also, Michel Foucault argued that dominant discourses circulating at any time in a society produce a regime of truth. Okay, so we can say that in the Japan of the economic miracle between the 1960s and 1980s, the regime of truth about Japanese national identity followed the ideas of Nihonjin Ron. I don't know if you have heard about it, I guess that you have, but this was a discourse about Japanese identity and Japanese uniqueness. Uh, it had its origins in some anthropological, sociological, and psychological studies, but it built a rhetoric that operated by covering itself in this scientific veil, just to promote some ideas about how Japanese people were and how they behaved. So the Nihonjinon promoted an ethnocentrism by which Japan was placed above the rest of Asian nations, and the attitude and characteristic behavior of Japanese people was said to be shaped by groupism in the context of a vertically integrated paternalistic society. So it said that Japanese people avoided conflict, avoided shame, that they had a strong spirit, resilience, and well, a unique aesthetic sense, and etc., etc. So these characteristics were promoted as the key elements behind Japan's resurgence as an economic power after its defeat in the Pacific War. Here, I want to situate Janishi-Mucho idols in the context of Japanese media and the Tarento system that developed after the Pacific War. Janishi-Mucho history goes back to the beginning of the idol phenomenon in Japan around the 1960s, precisely during the establishment of Nihon Jinron's regime of truth. By the 1990s, Janishi-Mucho had established itself as the main provider of male idols, with big names such as Chonentai, Hikaru Genji, SMAP, Tokyo. The basic symbolism of Janis idols involved youth and approachability and the best face of Japan's uniqueness ideal. Like everyone, but a little bit better looking, a little bit more talented. It was like the best face of the idea of Japanese middle class. The production of new idols by Janis Yimucho is linked to the already existing ones, and women are undeniably the major consumers and the main promoters for the expansion of the idol's impact to other social segments. Most of the idols of the agency have enrolled because their mothers, sisters, or other female acquaintances have influenced them into doing it. Those accepted into the trainee base, also called juniors, are gradually introduced to media as back dancers for the already established idols, and at this stage the agency begins to mold their image and evaluate their abilities, effort, and popularity within the audience. Then the most common pattern is for the agency to form groups from about 5 to 10 members and continue exposing them to fans. When they acquire enough popularity, they make their official debut with a release of a music single or album. Analyzing the production process, the Janis media representations, and the audience's responses to them, it becomes evident that a Janis style manhood has been established in Japan in the form of a model of masculinity that these idols embody consistently and that can be linked to that term Janis-K, which is used by media and audience to refer to men who show similar features with these idols. This tends to be hybrid in many aspects. The Janis image follows regular patterns, for example, these idols, regardless of them being 12 or 50 years old, are identified by their stylish haircuts, slender bodies, and mostly clean and juvenile faces. They are also widely known for their colorful attires in concerts and musical shows, and for their acrobatic and athletic ability displayed in typical Japanese dance routines. These elements can be considered as part of the representation of a fashionable Japanese male model that somehow contrasts with a salaryman, more um, serious and homogeneous image. Japanese idols are portrayed as attractive, but this quality is clearly defined in the context of manhood, as it is expressed by the words bidan, bidanshi, bishonen, kakkoi, and ikemen, which are always accompanying the references of them in media and among audiences. Handsome man, handsome young man, handsome boy. On the other hand, Their attitudes and social interactions displayed on media are reminiscent of the traditional salaryman model, which is also a characteristic of the vertical and group-oriented Japanese society depicted by Nihonjin Ron. This model implies that in order to be a respectable Japanese man, he has to be loyal and devoted to his group, in this case, the company or the organization for which they work, and to participate in it enthusiastically, placing always the group's interest over his own. He also has to be competent, he has to be hardworking. So Janis idols reflect these characteristics through the diverse narratives in their media interactions. Once they are part of a specific group, the members are expected to be fully committed to it, assuming all the personal cost of hard schedules, lack of privacy, lack of interpersonal relationships, and all for the good image of the group and the agency. When someone shows to be more focused on his own interest by breaking some of the strict rules of the agency, he is usually punished, relegated from media for some time, and commonly he loses popularity, being unable to regain his place. Having this general context of Chinese idols, I want to remind you about the context of Japan during the early 2000s. After the burst of the bubble economy in the 1990s, Japan was trying to revive its economy, while China and South Korea and other Asian countries were experiencing an accelerated industrialization that was threatening Japan's position. Amid a deep economic crisis, the once celebrated Japanese middle class began to shrink, revealing the country's social diversity and its deteriorating traditional ideals, uh, hidden for many years under the prevailing truth of the Nihonjin Ron and the economic success. So, lacking the economic environment to be embraced in the formal and permanent job market, without a strong indoctrination into the true Japanese identity, and amid increased accessibility to foreign ideas through the rapidly developing internet at that time, young Japanese people started to reject traditional models of national and gender identity. In this context, the conditions of an inverting population pyramid and an increase in the number of unmarried young adults were putting more stress on policymakers. Reacting to these problems, Japanese right-wing politicians and conservative citizens began to express the need to strengthen national identity and traditional values. Notwithstanding this, as early as 2002, Douglas McGray wrote an article in Foreign Policy which noticed that Japan had the potential to become a cultural superpower in the world. Um, he referred to this phenomenon as Japan's gross national cult and suggested that Japan could make use of the soft power derived from the popularity of its popular culture products as such anime, manga, video games, and others uh, to serve political and economic ends. Despite the global recognition, the Japanese government had not been actively involved in the expansion of the country's cultural influence. Official documents from JETRO and other agencies suggest that the attention attracted by McRae's article was what promoted the acknowledgement of this fact and subsequently uh, helped Japanese government to coin the term Cool Japan to, to, to begin considering content industries as strategic areas for economic policies. It was until mid-2010 that the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, METI, established the Creative Industries Promotion Office called Japan, which would be in charge of the planning and application of strategies to promote the development of the entire sector related to cultural promotion. Although the focus of these policies was to be attractive to the outside, this changed after the Great Eastern Japan earthquake of 2011, 311. At this moment, the measures and campaigns were intensified and redirected to focus more on the ideological aspect and to get Japanese people involved in the plans of revitalizing the disaster zone and also the economy. To achieve this, it was crucial to strengthen the national identity and to make people recover once again their national pride. So, the Cool Japan Advisory Council, formed by business people, scholars, journalists, and representatives from different ministries, responded with a plan to reinforce Japanese identity and self-image in the context of a story of recovery, resilience, and overcoming of challenges, and subsequently show these imageries to the world to supplement the already admired Japanese popular culture. Now, considering this background, I want to focus on the cases of Arashi and King and Prince, both group promoted and created by Janice Mucho. I want to discuss how the narratives involving these groups insert into wider discourses about Japanese identity and gender in times of crisis. Arashi is a five-member group that made its debut in 1999 and went into a pause of activities at the beginning of 2021. During the group's initial years, the members were marketed as typical Japanese idols. And they released many musical singles and albums. They were presented in music and variety TV shows. They participated in somehow juvenile or teenager dramas and movies, and they also had their own television and radio shows. This media presence initially established Arashi as a typical mainstream popular idol group, with a core audience of mostly young adult women and teenagers. However, between 2004 and 2009, when South Korean idols entered the Japanese market, Arashi started to evolve in order to appeal to a greater share of Japanese population and also to other Asian markets. In 2004, Arashi was designated as the face of the annual charity program Niyojikan Terebi, or 24-hour television, produced by Nippon Television Network. The audience of this TV show is consistently wide-ranging, so the participation of Arashi allowed the group and the members to show a socially conscious and more mature image, not only to regular followers, but also to people who did not even know them. Between 2004 and 2007, Arashi as a group and some of the members individually were also given main parts in family-oriented variety programs, uh, news shows, uh, more adult or mature types of dramas and movies. And all of these expanded the recognition of the group among society, further from idol fans. So these participations were also accompanied by media narratives that praised them on their supposedly uh, more and more authentic talent, something that was not recognized for many other typical idols. By the second half of 2008, Arashi's popularity had reached broad national audiences as they had matured into young adults and were presented as family-oriented celebrities with harmonizing personalities for all tastes. Some intellectual, some artistic, some affectionate, but all hardworking, approachable, and very Japanese. And in the context of the incipient Cool Japan and the growing popularity of the Korean wave in Japan, Japanese media began to refer to them as national idols. And Arashi and its members began to be signed into national campaigns that involved more than the advertising of products or services. They began to endorse Japaneseness, to, to call it somehow. In 2010, Arashi's national representativeness became formally acknowledged when the Japan Tourism Agency designated the group as Kanko Rikoku Navigator, something like ambassador for tourism promotion, and referred to the group as Face of Japan or Nippon no Kao. Using Arashi as key ambassadors, this campaign relied on appealing to the growing sector of Asians with high disposable income through images of high-end brands and products available in Japan, while also promoting the exotic and exquisiteness of Japanese conventional touristic spots, food, and crafts. In September 2010, the Japan Tourism Agency published a photo book that distributed to the libraries of public elementary, middle, and high schools in Japan with the stated objective of inspiring among young Japanese people the love for their country and the desire to know more about it. The book's title was Nippon no Arashi, which which could mean uh, the Arashi of Japan or the Storm of Japan, because Arashi means storm. This book contained essays written by the members of the group, transcripts of conversations they had with common people, artists, and craftsmen of different regions of the country, and most importantly, pictures of them visiting and admiring some places and experiencing diverse local cuisine, services, and handcrafts. Throughout the book, the group expressed the opinion and expectations on Japan and Japanese culture in general, highlighting qualities of the national identity that are supposedly present and represented in every place, cultural product, or service. It gives the sense of going through a personal photo album. Nevertheless, It provides very detailed information on the places visited by the members, making it, making it easy for everyone interested to go there, thus turning them into mediatized places that, for those who read the book, had a symbolism related to the narratives found in it, and also those narratives related to Arashi. At the same time, Japanese corporations, which had a long tradition of collaborating with the government to attain better results in their own industries, were also using the advancement of this branding to commodify the notion of the national. In the context of the implementation of Cool Japan policies and the ongoing promotion of domestic tourism, many companies began employing narratives focused on Japan and the exaltation of the national in their public activities. In their role as face of Japan, Arashi was increasingly looked after to endorse places, products, and services and relate them to the discourse of national representativeness that the group embodied. One relevant example is the case of Japan Airlines. Building on the image of the group as the tourism-oriented national navigators or the ambassadors of national tourism, the corporation signed Arashi to be the face of its national advertising campaign. The press release from Japan Airlines stated that the group had been chosen to be the image of the airline because it shared the purpose uh, of the company of sending a positive and joyful message to Japan. Since then, the group and members' image began to be used not only in commercial contents but also, for limited periods, on the exterior surface of some of the planes, the so-called Japan Airlines Arashi jet. You can see some pictures here that I took in 2011, and you can see that fans gathered to watch and take pictures of these planes. After the Tohoku earthquake, the 311, the members of Arashi became leading media personalities in numerous productions related to the restoration of Japan and in the national spirit. For example, as early as April 8, the group performed in a special concert called Utade Tsunago, Let's Connect Through Songs, produced by the National Public Broadcasting Corporation, NHK, in which the members expressed their belief in the strength of Japan and invited the audience to do so as well. In the same month, a commercial spot for a mobile phone company had the members referring to Japanese people as gentle, hardworking, and a bit shy, following some of the same narrative as the book Nippon no Arashi, about wanting to know more about their country and to connect with its people. In June, the book Nippon no Arashi was published with the aim of selling it throughout the country to raise funds for the victims of the earthquake. In July, a Message from Japan, a video produced by the Japan Tourism Agency, was broadcast on the Japan National Tourism Organization's website, presenting Arashi as ambassadors of Japanese people's gratitude for the support that Japan had uh, been receiving from around the world, while, while also showing that the country was quickly recovering. Also, Arashi's song Furusato, or Homeland, was promoted as an anthem of national bonding and pride in many contents produced by NHK and in Arashi's diverse activities, concerts, and so on. Arashi's event Waku 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 Gakko was held for the first time in 2011 in the Tokyo Dome as a charity event for the victims of the 3/11. Since then, it became an annual summer show until 2020. Uh, that year was uh, online because of the pandemic. And the characteristic element of the event is that the venues were turned into gigantic classrooms where Arashi members acted as professors who taught classes on diverse topics that would help people to become better citizens, Japanese citizens. Then, between November of 2011 and December of 2013, the NHK produced a sequence of special documentaries called Arashi no Asu ni Kakeru Tabi, Arashi's journey that built the bridge for tomorrow. And these were television programs hosted by Arashi and presented in a hybrid format of documentary and variety show. The members of the group went to diverse places in the country, reported on topics related to Japanese culture, and interviewed common people in a cheery and entertaining fashion. In 2013, Arashi was the main personality of the Niyo Yonjikan Terebi, the charity program, which that year had as topic Japan, the shape of this country, or Nippon te, kono kuni no katachi. The members explained that they intended to think and make people think about their nation and themselves as Japanese. In this way, until their break at the beginning of 2021, the image and name of Arashi were accompanied by the label of national idols and became easily found in media productions that clearly stated as objective to show the beauty, uniqueness, or importance of Japanese environment, culture, and society, openly flagging a discourse on Japaneseness, on Japanese identity, directly related to the support of the affected areas of the diverse disasters that occurred since then, since 2011, and aiming to rebuild the national sentiment, the national pride. For example, in 2015, every time more evidently, Arashi's music album was called Japanism, and in its promotion activities, the members expressed that they aim to represent Japan's magnificence through music, lyrics, and performance. Uh, the media promotion of Japan through Arashi is evident to the audience, but it is not necessarily perceived as ideological or calculated. Japanese participants in interviews that I conducted during fieldwork in 2013, 14, and 16 noticed the fact that the group was being constantly called national or face of Japan, but followed the same reasoning that was implicit in the media discourse. Arashi is called national kokuminteki because it is very popular inside and outside Japan, and because the members represent Japanese traditional values. At the same time, since they are the national idols, Kokuminteki Idoru, or the face of Japan, Nippon no Kao, their close association with Japan in many media contents is perceived as natural, shisen. When asked to elaborate on the national values represented by Arashi, informants mention peacefulness, respect, hard work, stoicism, sensibility, persistence, resilience, kindness, skillfulness. So this suggests that a portion of Japanese people, at least those who consume the text related to Arashi, have been interpolated by ideologies of national identity drawing from elements of the Nihon Jiron discourse, represented now in a contemporary fashion by some idol group as Arashi. It can also be argued that these ideologies have been naturalized in media consumers' daily lives, so they no longer question why there are so many continuing references to the nation or to Japan or to Japaneseness and who is behind them. Arashi announced at the beginning of 2019 that as a group they would take a break beginning 2021. However, another national idol group from Janishi was already on the making. In 2018, King and Prince debuted, and from the start, even when nobody knew about Arashi taking a break, media and Arashi members began referring to the young group as the next national idols. Tsugino, Kokuminteki Aidoru, and so other labels. The personalities of the members and the qualities of the group itself seem very similar to those of Arashi. Besides, obviously, their notorious artistic and athletic talents and attractive looks were also used to push the narrative of next national idol. When Arashi announced their break, Japanese media and numerous fans began talking about King and Prince as successors because of their approachable personalities and their respectful, family-oriented, and hard-working images. So very similar to the general image of Arashi and very similar to the characteristics of the Nihon Jiron discourse about Japanese people. In the almost 4 years now since King and Prince debut, the notion national has been increasingly used in banal references to the members of this group. One has been given the nickname of national boyfriend, Kokuminteki Kareshi, arguably by fans, but he and the media repeat it constantly. And two other members have been voted as national treasures for their looks in some biannual poll of a fashion magazine called BB. So they have also been given regular spaces in morning white shows in which they challenge themselves to learn anything from traditional Japanese arts to sports in preparation of the Olympics to how to perform house activities. So this diverse and extended media exposure is clearly intended to make Japanese audiences not only idol fans, to acknowledge them as they did with Arashi. During 2021, as Arashi stopped activities, King and Prince as a group and its members individually have been appearing in all kinds of media and entertainment activities. The most relevant for a national title was the hosting of the Niyo Yoikan Terebi, the charity event, in which the group led many activities related to the commemoration of the 10th anniversary of the 311, and also related to stress the Japanese resilience and solidarity that have helped rebuild the disaster zone. How relevant turns out to be King and Prince for the promotion of the Japanese identity is still to be seen. Nevertheless, it is clear that contemporary Japanese society, particularly young generations, receive better the national ideology if it is represented banally by popular idols. Hence, Japanese power elites continue to build on these celebrities that have optimal qualities to turn them into ambassadors of national values and national ideals and national ideology. The fact that the main reason behind Arashi's and King and Prince's extensive media power and popularity is the support that they receive from Japanese people gives the impression that Japanese society itself has selected them as ambassadors. And this facilitates the process of interpellation. By embedding the patriotic discourse in the idol's affable and non-political images, the political and ideological purposes of the bureaucratic, media, and economic elites, and their control over the dominant messages found in the idol's narratives remain disguised, making the discourse more easily accepted not only by local but also by foreign audiences. If, as Foucault argued, there is in each society a regime of truth produced by multiple forms of constraints that determine which discourses are accepted and which are rejected, then this is the regime of truth in the realm of national identity operating in post 311 Japan. The recurrence of narratives containing the same discourse about Japan and about Japanese people produced by diverse power institutions and wrapped in diverse disguises, among them the idols, has allowed the naturalization in Japanese society in such a way that people are compelled to choose between complying with the promoted ideals or face social judgment for not being a good or enough Japanese. As a conclusion, I would like to say that pop idols in Japan are much more than banal entertainment. They are powerful ideological tools, but this is not necessarily negative. They can serve, as they have, they can serve their society in times of distress, of crisis, to lift the national sentiment and inspire some people with their stoic and hardworking personality, right? So, well, here are the works that I have published on this topic, if you are interested, and I will gladly respond any question or comment through mail. That is my address. And thank you very, very, very much for your attention. I hope that you enjoy that talk.